Awesome. So we are live. Welcome everybody to this webinar. This webinar, as we have titled it, is discussing sexual assault and child sexual abuse on the Navajo Nation. And this is a webinar presented by Fort Defiance Indian Hospital Board Family Advocacy Center. So today, Thursday and Friday, we'll have these short webinars discussing different topics. So today we're going to be talking about the Family Advocacy Center, who they are and what they do. And then tomorrow we'll be talking about sexual assault and child sexual assault, what it is, what we can do about it, and also some myths and misconceptions. And then Friday we'll end with a presentation on healing after sexual assault, advocacy, how you can support loved ones and survivors, and also provide some additional resources. So I am glad that you joined us. I know that this is a pretty hard topic to discuss, so we're gonna kind of move through this the best way we can, being very mindful that this is tough for everybody, and everybody has experienced this in different capacities. So to kind of get things started, I'm going to go ahead and let our panelists introduce themselves. They're from the Family Advocacy Center here. So Lynette, let's go ahead and start with you.
Okay. Yat bene chik do shidene she ya Lynette Gilmore yin chiet. Zitna odefli dine hashka hazo nishle do to kana bashchin aro tanasahi edashche do to headlini edashanale. Shachina eya kia ani edashin ado shawe eya tabaha edashin totet nasha akot outines saninishlet. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our presentation this morning. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lynette Gilmore, and I'm a family advocate at the Family Advocacy Center at the Fort Defiance Hospital, where I have been for going on 4 years. And I come from Loop, Arizona. I enjoy my job. It's a difficult job, but I love my work, and I love what we do here at the Family Advocacy Center. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Lynette. Stephanie?
Good morning. My name is Stephanie Perkins. My clans are Tséhootsooí Medical Center, Ashihin Deshiche de Bethlejina Deshanella, Nakabato A Denasha. So I'm originally from Mexican Springs, New Mexico. I've been working here at the Family Advocacy Center going on 3 or 4 years, I think. So I've been working with TMC for 13 years. Thank you all who are joining today. There's a lot that we want to cover, so just be patient with us.
Awesome, thank you. And just to introduce myself, my name is Dallas Ellsworth. I'm the marketing director here at FDIHB, and just apologize to everybody for getting a little bit of a late start. I understand that Lynette and Stephanie, you were participating in a walk this morning. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the Navajo Nation Division of Family Services is sponsoring the Sexual Assault Awareness Walk, where dignitaries such as Miss Navajo Nation, President Nez, and the First Lady were present, and all the Division of Family Services staff were there, along with community members and other people in this work that we do. And we all met at the museum. Everybody spoke, the dignitaries spoke, and they left, but we participated in the beginning of it, and then we had to leave so that we could participate in this event too. So it's Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so we're trying to branch out to other events, and it's a pretty busy month, so we were happy we got to be there this morning.
Great, great. And before we jump into the presentation, can you or both of you kind of just talk about what is Sexual Assault Awareness Month?
Sure. Sexual Assault Awareness Month is the month dedicated to awareness all across, I think, the world, definitely nationally, that brings awareness on the issues of child sexual abuse and sexual assault. And being advocates for this department, we service the entire Navajo Nation for issues like this. This is all we do. So, and there's other organizations like Family Services, like state agencies and other organizations that dedicate a lot of time to bring awareness to communities and people, and also to support survivors and all that they're going through, and to let them know that their voices are still being heard, and to reach people who maybe have not disclosed yet, people who are healing on their own, people who have experienced child sexual abuse as children and they're living and coping with it now as adults. It just ranges all across the spectrum as far as age groups. And, you know, a lot of the times it divides families. A lot of the time supporters feel caught between different family members, because it does happen in households, and most likely perpetrators are known to the family, if not within the family. So there's a lot of taboos too in regards to our people, our Diné people, bringing this out into the light, because you know, traditional way, we weren't always, it wasn't out in the open. It's not something that we all talked about, but we want to change that. We want to make sure that children that need to disclose are heard and believed, as well as survivors of sexual violence. And this is for both genders. This is for however people identify themselves. You know, it doesn't pick and choose who the victims will be. Perpetrators are always looking for ways to act upon this violence, and it takes away innocence. It takes away people's self-esteem, you know, self-worth, and it's an ongoing healing process for, you know, a lifetime. So Sexual Assault Awareness Month really brings a lot of things to the surface, and it is an uncomfortable topic for people to hear, but Steph and I, we can talk about this in our sleep. We know so much about the issues. We know so much about what we do on a daily basis that we do feel that it needs to be unveiled, and it shouldn't be a taboo topic.
Great. Well, thank you both for being part of this webinar. And I know you guys have been doing a lot just throughout this month as far as different awareness activities you've been doing. Just a couple things. If you're joining us from Facebook Live and you have questions, feel free to drop it into the comment section. I'll be monitoring that, and we can have a little bit of Q&A at the end. And if you are attending us through Zoom, feel free to use the Q&A box to ask any questions, and we'll try to answer that either as we go, or we'll have time at the end to do that. So with that, let's just go ahead and jump right in. You guys have a presentation, so let me bring that up.
So this is a presentation that we did a couple weeks ago for the staff of Tséhootsooí Medical Center, just reintroducing our department to our staff members and colleagues and leaders of the hospital, because not a lot of people still aren't aware of our department and what we do. There's a lot of staff that are new, you know, because of COVID, staffing has, you know, there's turnaround situations, and new staff members come, they're not always familiar with our department. So we participated in a lunch and learn, and it's every month there's lunch and learns, and Steph and I did this presentation for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and there's 3 more that followed this one, which Steph and I will do the last of the 4 series tomorrow. So we can get started. So first of all, this slide states our mission statement, and that is to provide superior medical care and support to child sexual abuse and sexual assault survivors, and facilitate their journey to healing and huijong. Every department has their own mission statement, and this is ours for the Family Advocacy Center.
The Family Advocacy Center staff, we consist of Dr. Renee Ornelas. She's the director and the provider that we have here at the Family Advocacy. She actually came here 6 years ago, and she was asked by the FDIHB board to open the center. And I'm Stephanie Perkins. I'm a family advocate. Lynette Gilmore is our other family advocate. You've met Lynette. Sophia Parker is our administrative assistant. Rebecca Willis is a certified nurse midwife and FAC on-call provider. Meg Adams is a family nurse practitioner. She also works, they both work here at TMC, and she is also an FAC on-call provider. Currently, we have a position open for our SANE RN nurse. So hopefully we will fill that position soon. And in this photo, you have currently right now, we have Lynette, Dr. Ornelas, she's in the middle, and I'm on the end. And then we ordered this banner in 2020, and due to the pandemic, we weren't able to really use it, but we were really happy that we did have a banner. We were ready for our Sexual Assault Awareness Month, but things got shut down. So we are looking forward to using this in the future, and along with other new items that we had purchased for our center.
So here you see the service areas for IHS. We covered this map in our presentation to say that you see the Fort Defiance agency in teal, and you see the little star with the circle in the Fort Defiance agency. That's where the Family Advocacy Center is at the Tséhootsooí Medical Center. However, we provide services beyond the Fort Defiance agency. So we provide services all across the Navajo Nation, even in the border towns. We also service patients from the Hopi Reservation, from the Zuni Reservation, and we even have patients as far as Rama and Pine Hill. The other stars on the map, you see Gallup with the star and the circle also. That is to indicate that they do have services that provide exams for child sexual abuse and sexual assault, as do we. However, we are a family advocacy center, and we'll explain more about that and the difference. But if we are not available to provide services, we share a call schedule with the GIMC hospital. And then in Chinle, they have a SANE program also, and they provide services, but only for post-pubescent teenagers and adults. And then in Tuba City, they have a SANE program just like Chinle. However, any children who were to arrive to the city for child sexual abuse would need to go to Flagstaff for services. And then up in Shiprock, they have a SANE program that's only for post-pubescent teenagers also, and sexual assault. And any children from that service area would be seen in Farmington. So if we aren't on call, then the children would be seen outside the reservation or in Gallup. When we are on call, we're able to see children and adults. And then in Crown Point, we're still unsure about their SANE program. But yeah, this is our service area. We're not just Fort Defiance, where we service the entire Navajo Nation and beyond. So just to let you know, the Family Advocacy Center services. A Family Advocacy Center is a program designed to address prevention, identification, evaluation, treatment, healing, follow-up, and reporting. That's different from a SANE program in the way that SANE programs just provide an exam. A Family Advocacy Center, we're like the whole package. So we do evaluations and treatment and exams. However, because this is an advocacy center, Steph and I provide the advocacy work for our patients, meaning we support them through their healing, we support them through the remaining processes beyond the medical process. We provide emergency and scheduled medical evaluations and exams for children, teens, and adults. An FAC provider and a FAC advocate respond to all emergencies. Forensic evidence collection and treatment for emergencies. We provide 24/7 emergency medical services. And like I said, we share on-call schedules with Chinle for sexual assault and GIMC for sexual assault and child sexual abuse. and we provide follow-up appointments as medically indicated by Dr. Ornelas. And we provide, this is important to us, that we provide a comfortable, confidential environment with food, snacks, drinks, activities, treats, and resources provided.
So we're going to go over during our presentation some terminology, and we'll start with FAC, that's the Family Advocacy Center. SAAM is the Sexual Assault Nurse Examinator. A SAIC is a Sexual Assault Examination Kit, formerly known as a rape kit. CSA is child sexual abuse. SA is sexual assault. PD, CI is the police department and criminal investigations. FBI's Federal Bureau of Investigations. FI is a forensic interview, and we'll kind of talk briefly about that. USAO is the U.S. Attorney's Office. A DD is a delayed disclosure. And NNFS is the Navajo Nation Family Services, formerly known as Social Services.
So confidentiality is very important to us. We hold this in very high regard, simply because the issues that we handle on a daily basis are very sensitive, and we are at the onset of people's trauma. So community areas are small, community members know one another. There's high profile people on the Navajo Nation, and you know, again, this issue doesn't have any regard as to who people are. It happens in every family, and you know, we're all connected in one way, like Dallas mentioned. So confidentiality is just the most important thing to us. Case sensitivity for community members, staff members of TMC and other hospitals, family members of our hospital, and other people that we work with. You know, we've also had to hold that and handle it in a very sensitive way. So the EHR is the hospital health record system, and it's in the computer. Well, all the records are in computers now. So the Family Advocacy Center, our visits are not in the hospital record system. We only reference that when we need to, on a need-to-know basis. So all of our services for our patients will never be in the hospital record. That said, our patients don't have to check in with patient registration. And we'll talk about more of our process, but we just wanted to mention that we are not involved in the EHR at our hospital. There's no need to register as our patients come in. All of our labs are unidentifiable, and we use a type and X tracking system. So we do our labs here, like we get them prepared. And when we take them to the lab to be processed, there's no way for the lab technicians or anybody handling our labs to identify the people that they came from. All of our files have limited access, and they're in a secure location within our office. And being that there's only 4 of us on staff right now, we're the only ones who have access to that. Not even hospital security or anybody else outside of our department has access to that. Our exam room is the same. It's limited access, and we are the only ones who are able to enter the room, and we're the only ones who have access to the information in there. Case information can only be released to law enforcement, Navajo Nation Family Services, or by subpoena for a court case. So everything has to be documented, and we have to be able to show that we're providing that only for court purposes or investigation purposes. Our records releases, the patient must sign a records release form, and all of our sexual assault cases have the option to remain anonymous. And we'll go more into that later, but that is an option, and we respect that for our sexual assault patients. We allow them to think about it. We explain their options, and if they choose to remain anonymous, then we protect their identity even more so. And if they decide to report, they have that option to do that within a year, and they would report to law enforcement, and we'll support with them. We'll support them with that when that time comes. So this next slide is a lot. We're going to cover a lot of material in here. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. This is a lot of information, and if you feel triggered in any way, or if this is uncomfortable, feel free to take a break, step aside, rejoin us if you want. But if you have a history of child sexual abuse, or if you're working through a case or anything right now, we want to be sensitive to that. So this is some information that might be triggering. So we are a specialty clinic, therefore our process begins with referrals from several areas. And that could include family services, law enforcement, school officials. That can be other clinics that we get referrals from. So all of our work starts with a referral from other areas. Each case that we get is staffed with Dr. Ornelas and Steph and I. And at that point, the case is assigned to Steph or I to take on from that point. And it also depends on who had the case prior, because we like to have about an equal caseload. We pay particular attention to self-care and what our caseload is. So we staff all our cases and we make sure that Steph and I have an equal amount of that to take on. So timing determines everything with us. Timing determines the type of care our patients will receive. So for child sexual abuse and sexual assault, it'll be kind of similar when we go through these slides, but just to let you know that there's two choices here. We'll start with the emergency, which is on the left. So an emergency is considered anything less than 72 hours, which is 3 days. So depending on the location of the incident and the time of the day or night, patients and their guardians arrive to the hospital either through the emergency department, or they come straight here to the Family Advocacy Center if it's during 8 to 5 working hours. If it's beyond those hours, then they would arrive to the emergency department. Dr. Ornelas and an on-call advocate are notified. So being that we're on call 24/7, Dr. Ornelas is the only child sexual abuse provider for the Navajo Nation. So either Steph or I will accompany her here to take a call. Police report and case number are obtained, usually in the emergency room, and that's based on the location of the incident. So because we are the Fort Defiance agency, not all of our cases are handled by Window Rock PD, Window Rock District. It could be handled by Crown Point, Chinle, Kayenta, Tuba City, depending on where the incident occurred. Those are the officers that would respond to that case. So that's what we mean by pending the location. The patient and guardian are escorted to the Family Advocacy Center for an intake, which is done in emergency cases by Dr. Ornelas, an evaluation and a patient history with Dr. Ornelas. And whoever's on call, like Steph and I, will be in the room at this point, and we'll be listening in, taking notes, making sure we're not missing anything. And if there's anything that Dr. Ornelas wants to bring to our attention for follow-up care, she'll do that during this time. Once she's done meeting with the guardian, then she'll proceed to the exam room where she'll do the actual exam for child sexual abuse with a parent in the room. And if she needs additional support, then Steph or I will be in there, depending who's on call. When the exam is over, then Dr. Ornelas will meet with the parent again, or the guardian, and discuss any findings, discuss the exam itself. And if the parent has any questions, then Dr. Ornelas will cover that at that time. At this point, Steph and I will only do minimal advocacy, only because the patients and the family members are coming in from a traumatic experience, and it's within 3 days from anything that has last happened. So we pay very close attention to what they're going through, their needs, where they're at this point. A lot of the time they're in shock. A lot of the time they're angry. A lot of the time they're wanting to just completely protect the child, and we understand that. So we don't want to overwhelm them with so much advocacy work that they're not going to exactly hear everything we say. So we give them some basic things and necessary things that they might need at that point. and then everything else will come at their follow-up appointment. So during this time, during their time with us here at this point, forensic photographs are taken. The sexual assault examination kit is prepared, meaning swabs are taken. At this point, Steph and I are in the exam room, and we're actually taking the swabs from Dr. Analysis and are putting them in the dryer. We're hands-on, so we're not just advocates. We also help in the exam room at the time when there is evidence collection. Any clothing items that the child might be wearing at the time during the abuse, then we take those items and then we provide additional clothing for the patients. Evidence is packaged for law enforcement or FBI, depending on who will be handling the case. Mainly law enforcement comes to pick up the evidence. Sometimes we have the agents come in from FBI to pick up the evidence. At this point, an appointment is scheduled for a full child sexual abuse medical exam. And that's when Dr. Analysis will provide more time and more focus on the situation to evaluate everything, make sure we're covering everything that they might need. The emergency visit is just to make sure the exam gets done and that they're hearing that they're supported and they're hearing that we're here for them. So arrangements are made for law enforcement and FBI to pick up the sexual assault examination kit from us. So that's an emergency situation. The other situation on the right is a delayed disclosure, and that is any kind of disclosure that occurred more than 72 hours. So that's beyond the 3 days, because evidence can only be collected within the 3 days. So anything beyond that, we won't do evidence collection. We'll come in, well, let me explain. So most cases, child sexual abuse cases are delayed disclosure, meaning it's beyond 3 days. It could be years, it could be months, it could be a year, so we get all kinds of timelines here, and a lot of our cases are similar, but they're never the same. We are mandated reporters, so we ensure safety. We do scan reports based on the situation. If we feel that any children are unsafe or any other children in the home are unsafe, if the perpetrator is within the home, then we will do scan reports to make sure that all children are safe. And that goes for wherever the perpetrator is. So if there's children in the home of where the perpetrator is currently residing, then we'll do scan reports for those children too, because we want to make sure that more children are not abused. So an intake is done during a delayed disclosure with Steph or I. So that's the difference between emergency and delayed disclosure, is that Steph or I will do the intake with a parent or guardian. And at that point, an appointment is scheduled with the parent or guardian to do an evaluation and exam. So that is done at the first onset when the disclosure is made, intake is done. Then they come back for their scheduled appointment on appointment date. So the parent and guardian, the child, and possibly a caretaker, if needed, will come to the appointment here at the Family Advocacy Center. We welcome, escort, and screen our own patients at the entrance. If you've been to any of the hospitals, you're familiar with the screening, COVID screenings. We do that for our own patients because of confidentiality. We don't want them to say, well, we're going to the Family Advocacy Center and everybody hears. We always welcome them on the side. So we're handling the greeting one-on-one, and that's upon arrival. Steph or I will do our own vitals and COVID screenings here at the Family Advocacy Center again. So there's one at the entrance, there's another COVID screening here, and we'll take all the vitals for Dr. Analysis. We do an evaluation, or Dr. Analysis does her evaluation and another patient history, and she does exam and labs, and then she'll discuss findings, and then we'll do our advocacy work. So at this point, Steph and I do the bulk of our advocacy work. And it's not just that appointment and we're done. We have patients that still come back to us 2 years later. I had a patient who was able to come back and give me updates of her life and give me updates that she's going to college, and she might need help with financial aid, or anything that we can help her with, or any patients that want to provide updates in their lives beyond the abuse. Then this is our advocacy work is not just about the appointment itself, it's about how they're healing beyond this point. So The appointment with us that they come back to is usually an afternoon appointment, and it can take up to 4 to 5 hours. So we tell our families, designate the entire afternoon for your appointment because it's going to be lengthy, and we want to make sure we don't leave out any other abuse that might have occurred. So Dr. Annalis has been doing this for over 30 years. She knows stressors of children from the time they were born to where they're at in their life right now. So she's able to identify any kind of stressors or any kind of red flags, you might say, along their lifetime. So this is where she fine combs everything. So that's why we have such long appointments. Additional appointments are at the discretion of Dr. Annalis. So only she will determine if she wants to see a patient back for a medical reason. Otherwise, we're doing our advocacy work and we're in constant communication. So all of our advocacy resumes beyond this appointment. Oh, just to follow up on the labs that we do, we cover hepatitis B, syphilis, HIV, and STIs. And all of our scan reports that we do, they're sent to the FBI, law enforcement, meaning Navajo Nation. It could be the sheriff's office. It could be state police. You know, it depends on the location, but all of our scan reports go to law enforcement, FBI, and family services. The forensic evidence is all for the investigation and prosecution.
So Lynette had talked about child sexual abuse. I'm going to follow up with sexual assault, and our sexual assault cases usually refer to the adults. We do get referrals that come in, and we case staff them with Dr. Annalis, Lynette, and I. And usually the cases are assigned to either Lynn and I, and it's similar to the CSA cases. Timing determines the type of care that is needed for the patient that comes in, the individual that comes in that was assaulted. With adults, with the sexual assault, we would like them to, emergency cases would usually fall into 5 days, 120 hours. Most sexual assault cases are acute and occur after hours, at night, and on weekends. Depending on the location and time of incident, the patient will arrive here at the TMC emergency department. Dr. Annalis and an on-call advocate, which is either Lynn and I, will be notified. Like I said, we do have our on-call providers, and that includes Meg and Rebecca and Dr. Annalis currently right now. So one of the three, who's ever on call, we have an on-call schedule that goes out monthly, and that will determine who will be coming in for these emergency cases. A police report case number is obtained based on the location of the incident, and this usually happens in the emergency room. We'd like to get the police report or case number before we start with the sexual assault examination and evaluation. Like Lynn had mentioned, we get anonymous cases. You know, there are victims who want to remain anonymous, and this is totally up to them. You know, we want to make sure that they feel comfortable, they feel safe, and they feel protected. And so if this is the way they want to proceed with their case, we will honor that. Patients are usually escorted from the emergency department to the Family Advocacy Center for an intake, evaluation, exam. And when we are, during the exam process, we will collect forensic photographs, and that includes any of physical findings, bruises, cuts, even strangulation. And so we'll take photographs of that, and then we'll begin with the sexual assault evidence kit, evidence collection, like Lynn had mentioned, and especially with adults, we'll take their clothing items, And this is really important when we do get evidence. Dr. Nellis had talked about this during her presentation, and we want to make sure that when the victim comes in, and we do the the sexual assault kit, that we get cellular DNA that's left on them, and that's very important. So after we are done with the evidence collection and the exam, Dr. Nellis will talk to the patient about findings, and like with the CSAs, Lynn and I will do our minimal advocacy due to the trauma that the patient has just been involved in. Most of our sexual assault patients do ask to take a shower, and that is very important because they want to feel clean. It helps them try to process what they had just gone through with their body. So it's very helpful for them when they take a shower. They feel so much better. We offer food, drinks, coffee, tea, water, and then give them additional clothing for their needs, underwear, bra, for females, and we have clothing for males also. And then Dr. Nellis will return the patient to the emergency room to receive their meds, and upon their arrival there, they'll get discharged from the ER staff. Arrangements are made for law enforcement to pick up the sexual assault evidence kit from FAC, and we want to make sure when we do have law enforcement come, it's with a chain of custody. So if Lynn and I are finishing up with Dr. Nellis packaging the sexual assault kit, evidence kit, that we make sure that it goes from our hands, or if it goes from her hands, it's documented that it goes into our evidence refrigerator, and then from there, when law enforcement comes, it goes directly from the refrigerator into their hands. So we want to make sure that that's very important, especially in court cases. That's something that they do ask. So we want to make sure that we have the process in line. So with delayed disclosure, that's more than 5 days. And we rarely get those, but we do get those kind of cases. It's similar to a CSA process. We'll get an intake of the patient by the advocate, Lynn or I, and an appointment will be scheduled for an evaluation and exam. Appointment day, FAC welcomes and escorts, screens our own patients upon arrival. And that's just, basic screening, COVID screening protocol in the front entrance of the hospital. We'll bring them back, we'll start their vitals, and labs will be conducted in the FAC exam room. It's the same process with the Type X, with CSA cases. Evaluation, exam, and findings will be discussed with Dr. Nellis. And then we will proceed with our advocacy work. That's when Lynn and I will come in and we'll talk about ways to begin healing, referrals if they need it, if they have any questions. We start with the CVRC process, and we'll talk more about that later. But there's a lot of information that is provided to our patients, and we want to make sure that they empower themselves. They have the control to make decisions for themselves and how they want to proceed with healing and moving forward. And that's a process in itself for them. So we just want to be able to be available for them. Like Lynn said, they do come back to our office, they feel safe, they know that we know what happened to them. And they want to feel like they have some sort of support system. And sometimes, they don't have it at home, they get victim blamed. And so it's very important, and it's important that we see them and we're we're happy to see them. And so we want to make sure that they do feel comfortable, and we can provide food for them when they do come back to our office. And if they need anything else, we are available for them. All sexual assault patients are seen for 3 follow-up visits from the day of the incident. So they'll be seen at the ER when they come in, and then we'll schedule a 2 or 3 week visit just to follow up, make sure the meds are working, make sure they're taking their meds if they have any questions, and to see how they're feeling moving forward. 3 months and 6 month visits are continued after that. And every time they come in, they will get lab drawn and make sure that the medication is working, like I said, for that time period. The timing of visits is crucial for labs, medication, treatment, and advocacy. The patient determines if they want to return for follow-up appointments. So we do have a small percentage that does come in for the full 3 follow-up visits. Sometimes patients just want to come in, they come in for the emergency visit and maybe 1 visit following. And then they feel like, okay, I have to, life goes on and I'm getting back on my feet. And there are times where they need to come back and they call us and they say, I would like to speak with Dr. Analis, or I have questions. So, so we are pretty much open to our sexual assault victims, survivors, when they do return. And we want to make sure that we are in contact with them following these appointments and even after. And so advocacy resumes despite timing. Last set of labs are drawn are at 6 months.
So we're going to show you some pictures of our department. Since there's only 4 of us on staff and we don't have a nurse, we have a very small department, and all of our offices are dual purpose. So the top picture here is the family room. This room is 3/4 the family room and 1/4 my office. So where you see me sitting, you see my chair there. And that little corner is where I do my advocacy work. The rest of the office is the family room, and this is where our patients will wait, whether they're children or adults, and the caretakers will be here. We provide a lot of information in here. We have food and snacks in that little blue refrigerator. We have cedar available for our patients. We have sweetgrass, we have sage, and Steph and I can sage them down if they want, or if they just want to hold a sage and feel that while we're talking to them, that's fine too. In the little shelf cabinet next to the refrigerator, you see the DVD player. We have movies, we have activities for the kids down below, like crayons and markers, coloring pages, toys, books. And then the little table is for the children, and a lot of our family members use that to eat on. We have direct TV for our patients on the TV there. And then the little couch is just for our patients to feel comfortable and sit and relax while things are happening during the appointment. And then in the closet, we have a lot of more resources that Steph and I use, as well as on top. And we have what we call junk food snacks. So our patients are able to get stickers and junk food snacks from the closet when they're ready to leave our department. So the artwork that you see on the mural that you see above my office, all of our offices are decorated with beautiful murals. My office has animals. Steph's office has landscapes. Dr. Ernalis has a female, or she has the rainbow, and she has female rain in her office. And then Steph will go over the exam room. In the bottom picture, you see this is half Dr. Ernalis' office, and the part you see here is the room where she does evaluation and where she speaks to the children. So she has her own set of toys. She has her own set of puzzles and activities that she can sit and talk with the children and evaluate them just by talking and what they experience, what they remember. And she's very open to hearing what they have to say, and she wants them to feel comfortable. And they're able to draw on the whiteboard, and they're able to color as well while they're talking to her. And the table you see on the right is where we will sit with the caretakers, with the adults, the adult patients, and also social workers. If they come in, we sit with them there. Grandparents, whoever has guardianship of the children will come in and meet with Dr. Ornelas there. So this is what we call the family room and the consultation room. Let's see if I left anything out. Oh, the murals are done by none other than Mr. Gary Davis from Sawmill. And many of you might remember him from Wonder Rock High School, and he was also the art therapist for the adolescent care unit here at the Tséhootsooí Medical Center. So he came in and he did all of our murals for us. I think that's about it. You can switch slides, Dallas.
So this slide is a picture of our exam room at the Family Advocacy Center. On your left in front of you is the cultoscope. It has the plastic covering over it. That is used to take photographs. Dr. Ornelas or the providers will take photographs. They will also educate our patients about their body, and it's very important for females and their, even children and their parents. So that's the cultoscope. And she uses that during every exam. And then we go to the back where we see where those binders are. There's a dryer. That is where we dry our swabs after we get evidence collected from the body. And we will package those swabs, and that will be part of the sexual assault evidence kit. And then we have the gray, like, it's actually, it's used for medication, to store our medication, and the SAAM nurse will, she is only allowed to use that, so we can't even get in there. And then we have brochures and pamphlets, information for the parents and our sexual assault patients. This is where we usually take our patients to do complete the triage process. Dr. Ornelas will get the labs. She'll draw their blood. We'll get urine samples. And then on the right is the evidence, our secure evidence refrigerator, where we store the sexual assault evidence kit. And on the bottom, we just wanted to give you a little preview of what is inside the sexual assault kit. And so these are envelopes with different body parts that are labeled on it. Like I said, we'll get the swab, the provider will swab the patients, and then we'll seal them up. We put the police report case number on there. That's very important. The reporting officer who came and took the report. And then we'll identify what envelopes are in there. Not all of them are used, but we want to make sure that we do get clothing in there, and there's a separate bag for that. And then, like I said, chain of custody, we'll make sure that that is documented as well. So that is what happens during an emergency visit with child sexual abuse and sexual assault. And then from there, we lock the secure cabinet with the cultoscope, the laptop, and the refrigerator has a separate lock. So that's double protected in our exam room. And the murals on top are all of the 4 sacred mountains, and there's wording on each of them. Shown on the screen, that's that's, you know, what we identify at the end of our prayer. And we say it 4 times, and it represents the 4 sacred mountains. And so it's a tight space, but we make it work. And Dr. Nallis always says, oh, give women this little space and they'll make it work. And we do. And sometimes there's 3 of us in there. And then the patient and the child. So hopefully we'll be getting a larger space. We're crossing our fingers and we're praying, but that would help us out a lot. But, you know, this is our work, and we go in there and we do our work every time we're called in or during our appointments. So it gives you a little insight of what we're working with and where you'll be at if, you know, if we do have patients that come in. So during the pandemic, our staff didn't just sit in the office because we weren't really allowed to see patients on a daily basis. So we reached out, or one of the nutrition staff here at TMC, her name is Danae Bex, and she had collaborated with World Central Kitchen and St. Mary's Food Bank to deliver food to some of the patients in our area. So we thought that our patients would benefit from it. And so we reached out to Danae, and she set us up, and we came in here, and that's when we had our other nurse that was here with us. She had left in January, but we had meetings, we set up, got our information of our patients, where they live, notified them. They were so appreciative that we thought of them and that we would go out and deliver. And even during the pandemic, when there was no vaccinations, we got our N95s, our gloves, our wipes, and we made sure that we had good distance between our patients and our staff. So we would load the truck. Tséhootsooí provided us with the transportation. We would load the truck, and this was a lot of lifting and muscle work with the staff, and we would get down and dirty and get in there and organize and make sure that this family has so many boxes of food, and on the bottom you see fresh vegetables, and then store shelf goods in cans that we delivered also. So this was part of our venture during the pandemic. And you see the top right hand corner, that's Oliver Arviso, and he was the one that kind of spearheaded the relief effort with World Central Kitchen, and he was organizing that distribution center at the event center here in Fort Defiance. And so we went rural, you know, we went to Pinyon, we went to Farmington, we went to Whippoorwill, Black Mesa, we went to Ganado, Sanders, and I think far east was probably Gallup or Church Rock, past Church Rock, Pine Springs, I think that's where we went. And so we delivered all over, and this is what we did during the pandemic. And we were happy to do it. And we knew that our patients needed this extra help, and especially with food, you know, because it was hard to go to Gallup or go to Flagstaff or wherever, because, you know, we were told to stay home. And so this was much needed, and we were happy to do it. Next slide.
So here you see Baby to Baby. Just to give you some insight, Baby to Baby is an organization with co-founders Kelly Sawyer, Petrikoff, and Nora Weinstein. They are nonprofit and they provide essential items, children's items to children in need, families in need all across the country. And they contributed to our department and our families during the onset of COVID. So the process was a little lengthy. We had to apply, we had to get approved. There was a needs analysis and they wanted to know like the ages of our patients. They wanted to know what our patients needed during COVID. So this was a lot of the families that had little ones in their homes and they couldn't go anywhere. Maybe they couldn't afford diapers, or maybe they couldn't get wipes or baby ointment, you know, things like that. So Baby to Baby approved our application and they sent out a lot of supplies for our families. So things that they donated included diapers, hygiene items, snacks, toys, clothes, soap, baby formula, and blankets. And Steph, our former nurse, and Dr. Arnels and I, we had to organize everything, and we counted down what we had of what, and we were able to look at the families that we were working with, who had children, what size clothes they wore, and then just like the food, we would package these items in these trash bags, and we went out to their homes and we were able to deliver these items to these families in need that couldn't leave their homes during COVID. So the picture on the top left, you see me with all the supplies they brought, all the essential items, and the rest of the pictures are at the actual items in the vehicle and how we stored them and also how we gave them out to our patients. And a little fun fact is that some honorary members of Baby to Baby include Jennifer Garner, Chrissy Teigen, Amy Adams, Carrie Washington, Jessica Alba, Drew Barrymore, Kate Hudson, and Gwyneth Paltrow. So it was very, we are very grateful that we're able to provide to our families and also check on them at the time, because during COVID, it was a very isolating time and we didn't know how our patients were doing, or we didn't know how the families were coping with COVID, and we didn't know if any more abuse was happening. So by delivering, we were able to actually see our patients, look at the family members, look at the survivors, make sure they're doing okay, maybe do a little bit of advocacy work on the side, and just let them know that they are remembered and they're still supported, and these are scary times and we want them to be safe and we want them to have what they need. So Baby to Baby was able to contribute to that.
So like this morning, we participated, well, we wanted to participate fully in the walk this morning for sexual assault. But here are some of the awareness walks that we were involved with. We totally support MMIW, the MMDR, Strengthening Families. They did the domestic violence. You see a picture with Delegate Crotty. The middle, Lynn and I have gone up to a lot of trainings, webinars, even some of the subcommittee meetings of sexual assault with Delegate Crotty. In May 5th, coming up is MMIW Day, Awareness Day. So we are all encouraged to wear red. On the bottom left or the bottom right of the screen is the FAC staff. You can see Meg, one of our providers, is holding her son, and she participated in some of the walks with us. Dr. Arnels is standing right by her. Chris, who was a former SAAM nurse, is standing in the middle. I'm standing with the hat, and Lynn is standing on the other side of me. So we try to support our survivors, some of our patients in the community, and we want them to know that, you know, we are here for them and we know what they're going through, and we just want to be that, you know, that ear that they need sometimes, just to listen if they have to and let us know how they're doing. Anything you wanted to include, Lynn?
I know you covered it.
Okay.
So these are additional collaborations that we have with other organizations and agencies. Like Steph mentioned, missing and murdered Diné relatives and missing and murdered Indigenous women. We support them in their efforts and what they're doing at different functions when we can, but also they know that they can call upon us for any kind of support, whether it's letters or referrals, things like that. So we help each other. And a new grassroots organization called Diné for Justice, we're able to collaborate with them, and they did want to present to the council and to the Navajo Nation Sexual Assault Subcommittee. So they wanted data from us so that they could add that to their presentation. So we were able to provide that to them. Another agency that we work with, which is under the Navajo Nation Division of Family Services, is Strengthening Families. And we want to just highlight Althea James and just give her so many props, because Althea does a lot of things that we can't. Steph and I are hospital-based advocates, meaning we don't leave the hospital. Aside from the outreach we did during COVID, normally we can't leave the office. We do all our advocacy here in our offices. However, Althea James is a Navajo Nation victim advocate. So she kind of takes on what we can. If our patients need protection orders, if our patients need some court appearance support, she's able to do that. If our patients need transportation, she's able to work with us. But even more so, if patients are unsafe in their homes, Althea is there to step in and provide shelter services for our patients and kids who are unsafe in the home. So we love Althea James. We wouldn't be able to complete a lot of the cases that we do without her, and she's just amazing. And if we could give her an award, we would. So we also work with the Sexual Assault Prevention Subcommittee, like I mentioned, and that's with the Navajo Nation Council, spearheaded by Honorable Amber Canosby-Crotty. She supports us in all our efforts, and she works closely with us. If there's anything that she can help us with, she will. She reaches out and checks on us. She includes us in on events like the ones that Steph mentioned. And we're very lucky to have the support of Honorable Crotty with the Navajo Nation Council. And then another group that we work closely with is NASCASA. And NASCASA stands for Navajo Apache Ute Hopi Zuni Committee Against Sexual Assault. So we're Navajo Nation. We work with other tribes in NASCASA, and it's more of a support group for us to collaborate, talk about issues, also help each other out with troubleshooting with cases. And we don't actually talk about specific cases. And this is not a group, we have a lot of obstacles in our processes, but this is not a group where we're going to bash people or complain. This work is hard enough as it is. So we want to be able to work with other tribes to support each other through this work. And we attend NASCASA meetings monthly. Another organization that we support, that we work with, is Diné Equality, and that's for the LGBTQ+ support services and resources. Diné Equality, or Diné Pride, they're able to contact us if they're having events, and we support them in that, because some of our patients do come from this community, and we want them to know that they're safe here. They can be themselves here. We'll still support them regardless of how anybody identifies themselves, even with children. So we want to make sure that we support them and they support us too. And law enforcement, we don't just work with Navajo Nation tribal police. We also work with City of Gallup, City of Farmington, City of Winslow, Apache County, McKinley County, Navajo County, Coconino County. We work at the state level and of course the federal level with FBI.
So thank you for joining us today on Facebook Live. This was our presentation. Like Lynn had mentioned earlier, we have one. Dr. Analis will be providing another presentation tomorrow, I believe. And then Friday, Lynn and I will follow up with some of the healing process and more of our advocacy, what we do and how we help our patients move forward. And if you have any questions, like we had mentioned earlier, please put it in the chat box.
And Sago for joining us and participating in our presentation. And to you, Dallas, too, for facilitating.
Yeah, no problem. I really just sat here and learned and did the slides, but this is a great presentation. Thank you. I don't see any questions from our attendees or on Facebook, but I do have some questions just listening for y'all. So what about individuals that are off reservation for CSA or SA? Can they get your services even though, say, this happened in Phoenix, Denver, Albuquerque? What would that process look like? Or should they go to their local, is there any sort of collaboration between agencies in that?
That's a good question. We do have patients from areas like that. It depends also on where the incident took place. However, we will service patients that are Native American. So we've had cases where an incident happened in Phoenix, but the patient came home to the Navajo Nation, felt more safe to disclose and report. So we would still do our work here, or even if someone felt like they wanted to come home to do the medical process here with our office, they could do that. But we would also work with the agency where the incident happened. So like if the patient came from Phoenix and disclosed here and got care here, then we would work with Maricopa County or whatever the city involved, Phoenix, Tempe police, and make sure that they get our reports and the evidence to them. And in that case, Navajo Nation PD sometimes is helpful because they will retrieve the evidence and they might help us get it to Tempe, or agents might be able to. So we try to work with whoever is involved in the case and make sure that the process still flows for the patient. And if the patient is here and getting services here initially, but they move back to Phoenix, that's where we work with other agencies where they're currently living for follow-up care. So if it's a sexual assault and they have their initial visit here, we work with wherever they're from to say, well, of course, with the permission of the patient, to say they're going to get follow-up care wherever they're living. But if they choose not to, and they don't want to get any more people involved, then sure, they're welcome to come back, and if they need transportation or any help getting here for their appointment for their follow-up care, they can do that too. Same with children, the families sometimes are like, they feel safer here on Navajo Nation. So we'll work with however, we're flexible and we want to make sure they receive the quality of care that they would hear. And we also follow up to make sure that they went to their appointments. We make sure that they're doing okay wherever they're coming from.
Awesome.
And sometimes it's a little tricky with FBI if they handle some of the cases with us, because we do have a New Mexico jurisdiction, like they have the New Mexico side and we have the Arizona side. And so different agents work with New Mexico and different agents work with Arizona, and we just got to make sure that we follow through with the counties that the patients live in or where the incident occurred. That way, that victim specialist for that specific county, like Apache County, will come out and meet the patient and will even be able to transport the patient depending on their situation at home, their financial situation.
Right. And we work with other advocates, like Stan said, where there's all kinds of different advocates. There's U.S. Attorney's Office advocates, FBI advocates. So depending on how we're handing off case information, we work with them to make sure that the patient knows the process. Like, you might hear from so-and-so because they're an advocate in this other area. So we're all here to support you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. There's one question from Zoom. How many advocates are available during an on-call shift?
Well, an actual call, like if I was called in tonight and, well, if we look at the schedule and let's say I'm on call today, which I am, if we got a call, I would be here with the patient and the provider, and it would just be me. So like if tomorrow Steph's on call, she would be here. So during an appointment, and whoever gets the call would follow through with the case, because we want to provide trauma-informed care. We don't want so many people coming in from our office and they see different faces and they might get confused. So once I take a case, it's my case, and the same with Steph. So, and then it balances out eventually. So yeah, there's one advocate per case per visit.
But there's 2 advocates within our office, within TMC. So it's either Lynn and I. So there's 2 advocates.
Awesome. One question from Facebook. What can you do for elderly patients that were assaulted in the past? So I think this is two questions. One, do you guys approach elderly patients differently? And is there sort of a time limit as far as what can be done, as far as like years or anything like that?
No, that's a good question, because sexual assault doesn't discriminate. Our youngest patient for child sexual abuse was 6 months, and our oldest patient for sexual assault is 77. And we have worked with elderly individuals, male and female, who have disclosed sexual assault. And we are even more gentler on them because we have generational trauma. You know, we have cultural trauma that goes back to boarding school days, that goes back to long walk days, you know. So knowing that we're working with elderly, we keep all that in mind. We keep in mind what their approach is, whether they're religious or traditional. You know, we want to handle their cases that way too. But because they're elderly, we also work with their family members. So the patient's children might have questions. The children might want to bring their mother or their father to the appointment. So we handle it with the most care, and we would still provide the same kind of labs per visit, just to make sure nothing has surfaced, you know. And if it was a brand new assault, then we would still handle it the same way as an emergency visit. Steph, did you want to add anything?
No, just you've touched on everything. It's just making sure that we make the proper accommodations for them and their health needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other question, you mentioned just the amount of importance that you guys have on confidentiality. Even your records are separate from hospital records, and nobody sees these records outside of you, or from you both, as well as the providers and those attached to the case. When it comes to individuals under the age of 18, are they required to have a guardian or a parent to call you or to come and say either a delayed disclosure or an emergency?
That varies on the situation. If it's a child, prepubescent child, and the custodial parent or the guardians the child need information, we would only work with the person most likely that we did the intake with. Most of the time it's mothers. And if it's post-pubescent, it's tricky there because they're teenagers. And if it's a child sexual abuse case for a teenager and they meet the requirements to, well, if it's a child sexual abuse for a teenager and the abuse happened prior to 12, or even if it happened and the perpetrator is, what's that word, Steph? If they're in a role of, gosh, I just lost that word. If they're in a role where they're considered like a caretaker of the child, then that's when we would work with the parents and whoever we did the intake with. If it's a teenager who is reporting sexual assault, like let's say we had a teenager who was assaulted while the person was at a party or went on a date and was assaulted on a date, then, and this is a teenager that is what, 16 or over, then we would work with the patient. The relationship between Dr. Analis and the patients she holds that in high regard too. So if the patient is a teenager and if he or she experienced sexual assault, then Dr. Ornelas' primary role is to be there for the patient. And then because she doesn't want to damage any kind of rapport between her and the patient, she'll work with that patient. But she'll also tell the patient, if you want me to explain to your parent anything, we can. If you want her involved in this, we can. So these teenagers feel like they have this, they have a sense of control in the situation, and not everything we talk about, we're going to go run to mom and dad and tell them, or the guardian or whoever. So we want to protect their privacy also. So if it's an adult, not just anybody can call and get information on our patients. Like a husband can't call and say, my wife is seen there, what happened? You know, we don't know if that's a perpetrator. So things happen in relationships and marriage. So we have to be very careful as to who we talk to. And when we correspond with our patients, we make sure that they know who they're talking to. Even if we talked to them yesterday, we'll still identify ourselves as this is who you're talking to. You know, are you okay to talk right now? Is now a good time? And be sensitive to that.
Awesome.
Did that make sense? It's kind of tricky.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes complete sense. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions, but I do have a comment from a viewer from Tucson who does similar work in this field. She just said, I don't have a question, but more of a comment. I just want to commend you both for doing this work. I work in a similar field in Tucson. We have about 20 advocates who share on-call shifts for the entire month. So to hear that you two are servicing vast areas of the Navajo Nation is incredible. So I echo that too. That's just from what you're doing with just from you two to just the resources you have to the space. It's truly amazing. You guys do a great service. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and end.
Okay, thank you so much
Dallas.
to the listener and the comments and questions.
Yeah, and to everybody, we'll be here again tomorrow on Facebook Live with Dr. Ornelas talking about SA and CSA, and then Lynette and Stephanie will be back on Friday to talk about healing and what we can do to support those that we know who are survivors, and if individuals have experienced this, what resources are out there.
Yes, and we'll follow up more. It'll be more detailed than this as far as advocacy goes. Yeah.
Awesome. Great.
And don't forget, we have more information on the TMC webpage. We have our own family advocacy page, and that also includes the healing book that Lynn had developed with some of our traditional practitioners. It's very helpful. We give it to all our patients, and they did a wonderful job creating it.
Awesome. Well, thank you both.
Thank you, Dallas.
Thank you, everybody out there.